and welcome to Daf Gimel Amud Beis of Amud Yomi. Today is Thursday morning, the 28th day of the month of Tammuz, and Pesachim Baruch, we are continuing where we left off at the bottom of Daf Gimel Amud Aleph. The Gemara was discussing the halachas of speaking properly, of speaking with dignity and speaking with respect, and speaking positively. And the Gemara had told us that Rabbi Shmuel, from the Brisa of Rabbi Shmuel, the Beis Medrash of Rabbi Shmuel, a person should always speak in a way that is clean, avoiding saying the word with regard to Tumah of a Zav. The Pasuk had told us that there's a tumah called Merkav for a man, and for a woman that was called Tumas Moshav, impurity that comes as a result of sitting, not as the result of riding. And that was to indicate a sense of propriety. Even though the halacha is exactly the same thing, it is far more appropriate to discuss sitting for a man, sitting for a woman in the same context that one would discuss riding for a man. The Gemara, right at the bottom of the Amud, questions this. Says the Gemara as follows: "V'isha loksiv b'merkav." What do you mean that the Torah always speaks with a sense of propriety, with a sense of dignity? The woman is never referred to as riding. Does it not say, with regards to the meeting of Yitzchak and Rivka, that Rivka got up and took together with her maidservants, Vatirkavna al Hagmalim, and they rode on the camels. Specifically, it says that Rivka and the women that were with her, they rode on the camels. It says, no, Hasam there, Mishum Biatusa Dgmalim, there because they were afraid of the camels. Camels are frightening things. Archahi, this is the normal way of doing things. Baksiv, that's the pasuk says, not say Vayikach Moshe es ishtav es banav v'yarkiveim al hachamar, that Moshe took his wife and his sons v'yarkiveim al hachamar, and he put them to be riding on the donkey. It says, well, no, hasam mishum banav. There, the Torah says v'yarkiveim, he made them ride, means Moshe made his sons ride, but in the Chalavi, that Tzipora, his wife, was not riding; she was sitting. Or this would make it normal. Now, what is the difference between riding and sitting? So the Rishonim already point out that this was the old custom in Europe, that men would ride with their legs split on top of a horse, whereas a woman would ride sitting to her side, so that she did not have to split her legs on top of the animal that she was riding on. And this was normatively assumed to be a much more tsanua way of riding. The Ben Yoyada asks an interesting question here, which probably has struck some of you. It doesn't seem to make 100% sense, because the Gemara is telling us that it is appropriate to refer to all things that are not so appropriate in a way that is appropriate. So instead of saying the word merkav for the tumah that results from a woman sitting on a horse, it says Moshe, that she's sitting, not that she's riding, because the Torah wants to speak Balash and Nikia. And then the Gemara asks the question, well, hold up a second. Doesn't it say that Rivka and her Naharos were riding on the camels, and Tzipora and her sons were riding on the donkeys? So the Gemara's answer is no, because they were afraid they were riding. So the Ben Yoyada says, I don't understand. We're not talking about what actually happened. We're talking about what the Torah is referring to as what happened. Even if they did ride the camel, well, why would the Torah tell us that they were riding said that they were sitting on the camel? Because that's the Lashon Nikia. We're not talking about what actually happened. We're talking about the way that the Torah is describing what happened. That's the whole halacha that we are discussing. Says the Ben Yoyada something fascinating. He writes that we're talking about two separate things here. The Torah tells us in many cases, Balash and Nikia, since the Torah says moshav by a woman riding an animal. But in this case, it says merkav by a woman riding an animal. What you are learning here is two things. Thing number one is that it is appropriate for a woman to not ride an animal with her legs splayed on either side of the animal, but it is appropriate to ride an animal to the side, for a woman to ride an animal in a way that is more tsanua. That is what we have learned as a side benefit of knowing that there is a sense of dignity in saying Moshev instead of saying Merkav. So if that's true in general, then why did Rivka and her Naros ride the camels? So the Gemara says no, because there they were terrified of the camels, and therefore in a place that a woman would be terrified of the camel, then there's no discussion to have. Then she should ride it appropriately, and the concern of Lashon Nakia goes out the window, because, meaning the Lashon Nakia as well as the practice, which is more Nakia, goes out the window. And then the Ben Yoda adds or ends off his discussion here with a fascinating line. He says, and therefore in Arabic lands, that we live in them. He's talking about Bavel, 150 years ago. He says, since our women don't ride animals for fun, like people don't go horse riding for fun, for entertainment, or women certainly don't. He says, women here have never picked up this minhag of riding to the side like they do in Europe, both Jews and non-Jews. Nobody's learned how to do this. Why? They sit to the side, without splaying their legs across the animal. Meaning they don't sit on an animal, they ride animals. Why? Because biatusa, meaning if there's a concern, if there's a safety concern, if there's a health concern, so then the lashon nikia as well as the practice that is nikia goes out the window. Okay, top of the Amud on Daf Gimel Amud says the Gemara as follows: V'haksiv, does it not say v'hi rechavas al hachomer with regards to Avigail meeting David HaMelech? Before he was David HaMelech, he was just David. He hadn't yet become the king. Says the Gemara, no, it was not time. She was terrified. So she was riding in a way that was safe. So then it would be normal to ride an animal regularly. But if you want to say that it wasn't, she wasn't afraid of the night, either because it was not nighttime, or she wouldn't have been afraid of the night. So she was afraid of David. Ika, that certainly would have been the case. If you want to say Nami, like David wasn't yet the king, why would she have been afraid of him? Yeah, but for sure she would have been afraid that she was climbing a mountain, which is what the pasuk describes. So, in any case, that there is good reason to ride safely, that would be where one is not concerned about the lashon nakia and the practice that we learn from it. Now the Gemara is going back to the discussion that the Torah has tried very hard not to say the word tameh. Says by Nach that behema asher inen ta'ara, the animal which is not pure. So the Gemara says, well, hold up a second. What? The Torah doesn't have the word tameh? Of course it has the word tameh. Ela kol heicha dechi hadadinin. Rather, any time that you have two phrases that are equal in length, meaning you can pick without adding words or letters, then we always choose the lashon nakia. Kol heicha de nefishim, meaning any time that there are many words, mishtoi b'lashon katsara, we prefer brevity over cleanliness. Meaning, if you have a choice to say a long phrase that is clean, or a short, concise, and therefore clearer phrase, that's how Rashi learns. That's the value of saying b'lashon katsara, is brevity adds to clarity. So then we would use the lashon katsara, then we would say it shorter, meaning tameh is certainly fewer words than asher einen Torah. So you're going to now ask the question, well then, why does the Torah tell us v'abahim asher einen Torah by Nach? So now that's to teach you the principle. Once we establish that that's a true principle, then throughout the Torah, anytime that we have the option of weighing up between brevity and cleanliness, we're going to choose brevity. But if all things being equal, we will choose cleanliness. That is the more appropriate way of speaking. Good. Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav, like Rav Huna said the name of Rav, Amila. And some say, Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav Mishum Rabbi Meir. This goes bair to the tradition of Rabbi Meir. But you should always teach the Talmud in a way that is short, in a way that is clear. I think it was Ernest Hemingway that once wrote a letter to a friend that was very long, and he writes, I would have made it shorter, but I ran out of time. Meaning, to say the same thing in fewer words is hard work, because it adds to clarity, and it adds to the ability to state it in the best way possible. So, since that's true, it would always be appropriate to say things in the fewest words possible, fewest words necessary, in order to be able to explain that point. Says the Gemara, really, is it 100% true that any time that we have the option of choosing a phrase that is more dignified, if it's exactly the same amount of words and letters, we do that? Yeah, but riding and sitting are the same amount of letters. She was riding on the chaver. Says the Gemara now, Recheves ksiv without the vav. Recheves is written without the vav, and therefore that is a clearer and more concise way of writing. Meaning, to write without the vav, to write in a way that is chaser, is brevity. So we are saving letters, and because of that, even to the extent it doesn't change the interpretation, doesn't change the meaning of the word. All Recheves is a shorter way of writing it. Now, you could ask the question: Yosheves could also be written without a vav, but as opposed to Recheves, with a normative way of reading it would be in Recheves, the word Yud Shin Beis Saf is probably more often written as Yashavta. That would be the more common way of conjugating that in the Torah. So you would need the vav in order to tell you that it's not Yashavta, but it is Yashavas, whereas Recheves is not a common phrase in Tanakh, and therefore it would probably be most normatively read as Recheves. So brevity there takes precedence over derech kavod. Says the Gemara further. I don't tell Talmid, they have some stories indicating this. There were two Talmidim that were sitting in front of Rav. Chad Amar Shavisinan Hai Shmaitze Kedavar Acher Misankan. This the shear is so hard, it's making us exhausted like a davar acher. What's a davar acher? So this is talking about a chazir. Like, I'm so tired. I'm tired like a davar acher. I'm tired like a pig. The other one said, the other one said, this shear is so hard. It makes me tired like a goat. And Rav didn't want to speak to the one that compared himself to a pig. He only wanted to discuss, to learn with him, to speak to the one that compared himself to a goat. Meaning, if you have a choice of how you want to spell things out, you always want it to be belashon nikia. Why speak about a pig when you can speak about a goat? So, there were two Talmidim that sat in front of Hillel. One of them was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was of the Ktanim of the Talmidim of Hillel. Now, the story happened in front of Rebbe, and the student that we are referring to is not Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, but Rabbi Yochanan. The Amora was a student of Rebbe. So either which way, it's a Rabbi Yochanan. We're not sure. There are two traditions. One that goes all the way back to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, or that it was Rabbi Yochanan learning from Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Either which way, Chad Amar, one of the story goes that one of the students said, one of them said, why is it that when you pick grapes, when you cut the grapes, that has to be betara, ve'in moskim betara, but when you pick olives, it does not require you to be in a state of tahara. The Chad Amar, and one said, why is it that one is obligated to pick grapes, betahara, or moskim betuma, but you're allowed to be mosek, you're allowed to pick olives betuma? Amar, so the Rebbe in this case, either Hillel or it was Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, said about this exchange, I know that this one is going to be a Mari Hara B'Yisrael, that is going to be a teacher to the Jewish people, and it didn't take so long until this person was a teacher of Torah in the Jewish people. Now, it's important to point out that this exchange was both Lashon Nikia and in a way that was clearer, which is a fascinating thing. He managed to achieve both. Because, the Rishonim point out, why is it that one is required to be Botzer B'Tahara, Ve'in Moskim B'Tahara, but one is not required to be Mosik B'Tahara? Meaning, what we are teaching is a heter, is a ptur, that you are not obligated to cut the olives B'Tahara. The other one said, Moskim B'Tuma, and one is Mosek B'Tuma, means even betuma, which makes the phrase not congruent. You say you are obligated to cut grapes in a state of ritual purity, and you're obligated to cut olives betuma? That doesn't make sense. Meaning, if we're talking on a level of obligation, then it is both clearer and cleaner to say ve'in moskim b'tahara. Moskim betuma could imply that you are obligated to be moskim betuma, which would be ridiculous. So brevity and clarity were achieved by the first time, and that's why he's going to be a Mari Hara B'Yisrael, because he has both Lashon Nikia as well as brevity and clarity. Says the Gemara as follows: Hanu Tlasa Kahana, there were three Kahanim. Chad Amar Lahu, one of them said, Higiyani Kepol, I got from the Lechem HaPanim, from the showbread that was in the Beis Hamikdash, I got the size of a pole. That's the size of a bean. B'chad Amar. And the other one said, Higiyani Kazayis. I got a Kazayis size. V'chad Amar, and one said, Higiyani Kiznav Hal Ta'ah. I got the size of the tail of a lizard. That's a very funny way of referring to the size of food that you got from the Lechem HaPanim, from the Shulchan in the Beis Hamikdash. And they started investigating after this fellow. Umatzu by Shemetz Puzzle. And they found a little bit, something was puzzle. Shemetz puzzle. There was something puzzle in him, and that would disqualify him from being a kohen. The Gemara now challenges that. Hold up 1 second. Don't we know once somebody is a kohen that has gone and served in the Beis Hamikdash, has served in the Mizbach, we don't now start checking after his lineage. That would be totally inappropriate, meaning we assume that the buck stops there. Once we've done all the checks to make sure that they can be kind of the Beis Hamikdash, we don't have to now start checking after them. In fact, it is improper to go check off them once they have served in the Beis Hamikdash. Says the Gemara, no. Maybe it wasn't a Shemetz puzzle, meaning it wasn't something that they looked after to check into his lineage. Maybe the correct way to say it is shachatz puzzle. They found a shachatz, which disqualified. Shachatz means that he was somebody that was very arrogant. He spoke in a way that was not clean. Ooh, what's the bug flying? He spoke in a way that was not clean and not proper. And therefore, that was the thing that disqualified. They found, this was something that is disqualifying. To speak in such a way, to speak with such arrogance, is something that would disqualify. It wasn't his lineage, it was his behavior that disqualified. Maybe you want to say, Shani Hassam, maybe they did actually check off his lineage. Why? Because he called it into question. And the Rishonim already to the days of the Mekubalim point out that the way that a person speaks is indicative of their most deepest and most essential nature. It is indicative of who they are. So if a person is going to blurt out a phrase talking about the lechem upon the Beis Hamikdash, to say that this is something that reminds them of the tail of a lizard, so that would automatically require some questioning. Now the Gemara tells a story, and this is a story that we learned Shabbos Hagadol. There was a certain non-Jew, an Aramean, that went to go eat his Korban Pesach in Yerushalayim. Amar, he said, Ksiv, the pasuk says, Kol ben neichar lo yochel by. Any non-Jew is not allowed to eat it. V'chol arel lo yochel, any uncircumcised person is not allowed to eat it. V'ana ha ka'achil meshufrei shufrei. I am going to go eat from the best of the Korban Pesach. I mean, I'm going to go join a chabura, and I'm going to say, yeah, I'm Jewish, and I'm going to join a chabura, and I'm going to eat from the Korban Pesach. Amar le Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira. Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira says to this fellow, Mika safulach me'alia. Did they give you from the tail? Fatty meat of the tail, that's the best. Amar le loy. He said, no, they never gave me. So he says, Ki salka lahasam emalahu sfoli me'alia. When the next time you go and tell them, I want to taste a little bit from the tail. When he went there, give me the tail meat. What are you talking about? The tail goes on the mizbeach. Nobody eats the tail. Amrulay, they said to him, Mein Amalachachi. Then they asked him, hold on, who told you to ask for the tail? Amalu, Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira, Rabbi of my hometown. Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira told me this. He says, Amru, my hi dekaman. What exactly is this fellow in front of us that is saying that Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira told him to eat from the tail? That's ridiculous. There's no way that Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira would have done such a thing. But kubasher. So now they started checking into who is this fellow that shows up in Yerushalayim, dressed up as a Jew, pretending to be a Jew, says he's eating from the Korban Pesach, says Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira told him to do this. Ashkechu d'armahu. They found out that he was an Aramean v'katlu, and they executed him. And there's a big question: what exactly did they execute him for? Not for today, but it's a big tumult in the Yerushalayim. What was his crime? Meaning he was a ganav. Maybe that was it, because Ben Noach, a non-Jew that steals, might be chayav misa. He's a ganav, or perhaps they were concerned that once they outed him, that he was going to go and report on them and make their lives very difficult to the authorities at that point in time. There's a lot of different explanations in the Rishon. Either which way, they investigated him, meaning his words gave him away, and they investigated him and they executed him. They said to Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira, Shalom lecha Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira, peace be unto you. Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira, da'at ben tzivim tzudascha perusa b'Yerushalayim. You live in the tzivim, and your net is stretched all the way to Yerushalayim. And it was on this that the Tosfos had said, why doesn't Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira go and tell it himself to the Jews in Yerushalayim? Why didn't he come to do Aliyah Regel and bring the Korban Pesach? And that's what the Tosfos says, because somebody that lives in Chutz La'aretz is potter from Aliyah Regel. That was the Tosfos that we spent a lot of time talking about Shabbos Hagadol. Nevertheless, says the Gemara, Rav Kahana Chalash. Rav Kahana got sick. Shadru Rabban Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Yoshua, berader of Idi. They sent Rabbi Yoshua, the son of Rav Idi, to go and check out how Rav Kahana was doing. Meaning, he was going to do Bikur Chalim and to check in on him on behalf of the Rabban. They said to him, Zil Badik Madine, go and see what's going on with him. Also, and they found out that he had died. So he told Kriya. He told Kriya because Rav Kahana was one of the Gedolei Adar, so he told Kriya when he heard that he had died. But then he took his garment and he turned it around so that the tear was in the back. Uvachi, and he cried. V'asi, and he arrived in the Beis Midrash. Amrulei, they said to him, Nach nafshe, did he die? Amrulei, Anna loy kamin. I didn't say that. Umotzi dibahu ksil. Because the pasuk says in Mishlei, somebody that says negative things is an idiot. I don't want to be an idiot. Meaning, you figure it out from my behavior. Take a look. You see that it's torn, that I'm crying. You'll figure it out. Meaning, but to share bad news is not something that anybody should want to do. The Gemara then continues one additional story, getting to the bottom of the Amud. We'll say this over quickly. Rabbi Yochanan Nafik le Kiryasa. There was a man by the name of Yochanan of Chakuk, who Nafik le Kiryasa. He went to go visit the villages. When he arrived, they said to him, how the wheat crop? How's the wheat crop? this year. Amar lahem, he said to them, Sa'ir nasa yafas. The barley turned out great. They said to him, no, we asked you about the wheat. Why are you telling us about the barley? Go and talk about the barley to the susam and the chamarim. Go and talk about barley to the horses and the donkeys. The pasuk says that wheat and that barley and tevin and straw are good for horses and for donkeys and horses and steeds. I think that's rechesh. So what should he have said? Meaning they asked him. Clearly the wheat didn't work out so well this year. So they asked him, how's the wheat? He says, the barley's great. He says, what should he have said here? So he should have said, last year the wheat was great. Inami, alternatively, the lentils, which people eat, that's people food, that nasa yafas. So the Ben Yoda here also asked the question, well, hold up a second, I don't understand why he was trying to avoid saying anything negative about the wheat. So he says, no, it's not just enough to avoid saying something negative about the wheat. They wanted to know, can you say something positive about it? Meaning, if there's a problem with wheat, so find something good in it. Say, yeah, last year's crop was amazing. Meaning, say something that the wheat is amazing. That's what brings bracha into the world. When you say something positive about the thing that you're worried about. It's not just to ignore it completely and talk about something else. So you could either say that the wheat was good last year and people would understand it, or that there's another grain, there's another food for people that's doing really, really well. And that way you bring bracha into the world. But to say that something that is totally irrelevant to people, not completely irrelevant, but that is far less relevant to people, that worked out well. So that's not the lashon hakir that we're looking for. We're not looking for people to ignore problems entirely, but we are looking for people to bring bracha into the thing that you're concerned with, which is an even higher level of being concerned about that. And Be'ez Hashem is Baruch, to be continued. Everybody should have a marvelous day. See you tomorrow.